I always felt that there were spirits, or a spirit, that would be called together when so many people were there and celebrating and getting wild and dancing around the fire and just being together and getting drunk and doing drugs. And there was always interesting people there, you know, new people I'd never met before, and people were real captivated by the spirit. And like I was saying before about the times that, you know, sometimes it would reach a peak of frenzy and everyone was alone in this big noisy crowd. But then usually around sunrise or something, there'd be the people who were still awake around the fire, and that would be one of the most peaceful and whole times. The breakfast the next morning and things were just some really fine quality time that, you know, really is my educational experience in this part of the country. It's been real important and real dear to me.
Do you have any particular favorite Oo-aans festival?
Yeah. It was summer solstice. Not this one we just had, oh, that was a good one with the one before. And there was a keg of beer in the barn, and I got there like at 2 in the afternoon and was working on that keg till about 6 or something, or I don't know when the hell it was, but I passed out. And I came to around midnight and everyone was tripping and pretty much peaking at that point. And so I had just dropped as everyone else was literally dropping. And I felt like I was the only person, but I'm sure there was more people awake, but I was very much alone when the moon was eclipsing and the stars were just shooting these rainbows out and everything was so beautiful. And I just remember, you know, walking around and watching people sleep peacefully, and I had just bought a rocking chair that day and I pulled it out of my car and set it in the driveway and just kind of rocked, and then I got up and took my clothes off and went out and danced in the field till the sun came up, and it was just a real wonderful, wonderful night for me. I just got a chance to experience some things I never experienced before.
It's an old adage that I learned a long time ago. It goes, work hard, rest hard. And I think a lot of effort went into a lot of things out there. And the festivals were somewhat of a therapy for getting together with a lot of people and just breaking loose. While having a structure for a party or a gathering, it's always a good idea to give credit where credit is due, so to speak. We borrowed very freely on a lot of different religions, and a lot of basic fundamental ideas of spirituality. The good ceremonies originally began with a recognizing of some of the forces that we were dealing with, and
which were?
Well, the elements. We a lot of times would salute to the 4 elements, you know, with several libations of wine, and recognizing the existence of things other than the physical world.
Well, for Halloween, last Halloween, we made a new king, or we made the old king out of corn stalks from the garden, and well, we set him up and, you know, on a telephone pole near the big bonfire to kind of show him what was coming, and then later that night, before we threw him in the fire to get rid of the old king, we had everybody say goodbye to the old king, and he had a very large, it's like stalk sticking out of where his dick should be, and everybody shook his dick goodbye, and they said goodbye, and then some women Well, this one woman came up, took him towards the fire, and she was dressed. She had a costume like the creature from the Black Lagoon, and she also had a bishop's hat on and this plastic dress that had little baby's parts in it and curlers and stuff. And she set him on fire. And then he went into the fire and he burned.
Well, he was like a spirit that came out of the cornfield and would bless our crops, make them grow real healthy and everything. So we'd have a good corn harvest when harvest time came.
What do you see as the negative aspects of Oo-aans?
Oh, it had its problems, definitely. There was lots of personality conflicts and personality differences involved. There was also the problem of living in a house that we didn't own, and we had to pay lots of money to rent.
It seemed to have really, the idea of Oo-aans seemed to have, have some really good ideas. But they never seem to be fully fulfilled because the idea of anarchy prevailed too much, and so no one did anything. So Oo-aans collapsed.
And then it seemed for others it was just a playground, you know, a great place to come and hang out and be with people who are accepting of different sorts. And so the whole thing as a whole, it couldn't work with those differences. You know, it didn't have enough people coming in there trying to do it right.
People didn't seem to make the connection between the ideals and what it actually became. It started out as a commune experiment, and it became more of a social thing.
People at Oo-aans came to expect to be able to crash on the couch and basically move in, yet take none of the responsibilities of paying rent or cleaning up after themselves. This is perhaps the greatest negative aspect is it became very shelterous and not progressive, stagnant.
I think that partly people were burned out from dealing with the Student Senate. Partly there were personal animosities that developed. Partly just the house is falling apart physically.
Also, one of the problems that was there is that people would kind of leech off the place. They would become a couch person. It's kind of like boat people became an analogy of them, is the couch people who would come. You know, they would come and like stay for months, you know, and live on a couch. And then there was no way you could go, nowhere you could go to really get away from people.
Or barn people.
There was barn people too. Well, they weren't so bad.
Wasn't perfect harmony. You know, there was times when people weren't communicating and the dynamics kept shifting, and there was times when people were being irresponsible towards the whole and, you know, expecting other people to take up their slack or just being unaware of the slack they were creating. There were times when, you know, things just got out of control and reached a frenzied proportion that was really disconnected. It was disconnected in a different way than the disconnection outside of Oo-aans, but where this group of people close together would come, you know, especially it seemed to happen for me a lot at parties, because that was when I mostly observed the whole group as a group. And sometimes when it would reach frenzy proportion, there was just a certain emptiness in the chaos and the closeness in the community, and those ideals were sacrificed to you know, individual people going nuts. But then that was part of it too, though. I mean, it was anarchistic in that way that everyone had a right to go nuts if they wanted to. But it seemed like a sheltered, in a way, or a safe place to go nuts in.
I think Oo-aans died, but I don't think the idea has. I think what was going is still going on, but there was something about that house in Allendale, the ability for people to go there and feel like we were on an island. It's going to be hard now to get back that feeling of a base, a place that you can count on going and being on somewhat of another world.